Hello, and thank you for joining this episode of Global Perspectives, a Janus Henderson podcast created to share insights from our investment professionals and the implications that they have for investors. I'm your host for the day, Laura Castleton. At Janus Henderson, we pride ourselves on having one of the best healthcare research teams in the industry. Through their expertise, we continually gain insight into the rapid pace of innovation happening within the sector and the tremendous opportunities they afford investors. While innovation has and clearly will continue to be a driving force within the space, government policy and rhetoric has also become a constant over the last decade. Today's environment is no different, and there are several questions on how proposed government policy could impact the sector. To dive into the debate, I'm thrilled to be joined by Luyi Guo, PhD, CFA, Research Analyst on our healthcare team. Luyi, thank you for being here.
Hi, nice to be here.
Let's just start because today is very dynamic in the government policy rhetoric. What's the overhang as you sum it up today in the healthcare sector?
Yes, we have had a very eventful year on the, news overhang. It started in November with basically RFK Jr. being proposed to be the HHS head. And there were concerns for various government industries, including the FDA, whether, there will be severe cuts to the FDA, whether the review timelines will still be met. And the industry kind of works through that. And going into the new year, people thought, okay, maybe since pharma underperformed last year, this year might, do better. What happened was by March, there has been more talks about tariffs. And while pharmaceutical tariffs is not in the initial tariff announcement that's exempt, but that is an overhang because we know the president has talked about pharmaceutical tariffs will be announced. And we see that as linked to the trade negotiation, especially with Europe. Because for Europeans, pharmaceutical industry is one of their so-called national champion industries. And they do not want pharmaceutical tariffs for the export into the U.S. So that's kind of linked all to that. And then the street is good at estimating what the impact could be. And by now, I'm pretty sure many people have pretty good models reflecting what possible tariff, if comes, for the pharmaceuticals will be. But then the overhang, a little bit more than a month ago, started with the most favored nation, MFN, and that discussion about drug pricing in the United States. And I see that, again, is linked actually to the trade negotiation. The Europeans has been imposing sort of government-controlled drug pricing on multinational companies and for all the drugs that sell in the U.S. So that impacts a lot of the U.S. drug companies as well and their own pharmaceutical industry. And that's coming to a head because as the price continues to rise on the list price in the U.S., and by the way, not necessarily the net price, but the list price in the U.S. is what the public sees. And the Europeans negotiate down price every year. So there is a big gap. So that's coming to a head, so much so that even the European pharmaceutical companies themselves are talking to their own government, saying if the government don't pay enough for innovation, that is detrimental to their own kind of R&D infrastructure in Europe. So that's the basically three hits to the industry, and that becomes an overhang for the industry.
If you package it all together and look at those overhangs, particularly like MFN, most favored nation, what's the likelihood that happens? What do you see as the outcome potential?
So for the most favored nation modeling, at this stage, it's the most unclear for the investors. Because first of all, we do not know what the scope it is, what government channels will be impacted. Is it going to be Medicare Part B as a boy, or is it going to be all Medicare Part B and Part D? or is it also including, Medicaid? As I think this is linked to the tariff negotiation, we will see what kind of response the European government will get. Because as I understand, the most favored nation likely is also part of the negotiation with the Europeans to get the European government to pay a little more for innovation. In some ways, you can think about it similar to European nations finally agreeing to pay for more for NATO. So this is linked, and but all that negotiation, of course, is very much under wraps. We do not know what the impact will be and what the trade-off is, how much negotiation power U.S. have on pharmaceutical tariffs versus how much European nations are willing to pay. What I want to say that's positive is, for the industry, in order to get European government to pay a little more, it has to be involved by the government. It has to be a national level trade negotiation. This is happening. So that's, if we ever have a chance for the European countries to pay a little more for innovation, this actually is a chance.
This is the moment.
So that's actually could be positive because I see MFM linked to the tariff negotiation.
Let's say that this does go through, to your point, maybe we do get some more spend from Europe. Just how does that affect the global landscape? Does that mean you're a little bit more cautious on what the impact would be to the European companies or U.S.? Are you favoring one over the other? How do you think about the range of outcomes?
Yes, so I think the multinational pharmaceutical companies, very much the same. They make their most money and profit in the U.S. They need their access to the U.S. market. And a lot of the European pharmaceutical companies, their major R&D centers, they're all in the United States, along with the European R&D centers sometimes. So the impact, I think, will be more like what exposure as a percentage of revenue are each companies to the United States market. So then you can kind of consider how that will be, or how much exposure they are to the U.S. government channel, right? So each companies have their unique portfolios that has a little bit difference in the exposure.
Got it. Okay, so that makes sense. We've gone through some of the overhang regulatory. We don't know what's going to happen, particularly trade negotiations and MFN. But I want to dig into something else that is affecting the industry in general, pharma in particular, and that is that a lot of the big drug companies have patent protections that are set to expire. Mm-hmm. So walk us through really what happens with that and how you expect that to affect kind of those bigger companies going forward.
Yeah. So again, patent protection is important, right? Without patent protection, there will be no innovation. And without innovative drugs, there will actually be no downstream generics or biosimilar drugs that we do look to as a way to solve the cost of drugs. So for example, 90% of the drugs in the U.S. Volume are generics or biosimilars, which actually really help to keep the drug price down. So when the drug goes off patent, you get generics, biosimilars coming in that increase the market competition and the price reduces. So basically, in essence, that drug revenue stream is no longer for the innovative major biopharma companies. For the biosimilars, we are easily seeing price drop within the first year of anywhere between 30 to